Hey all, it's your girl Aaron, and I know I said I wasn't going to do many videos about religion, but I did want to make one more, and that was just to talk a bit about Jesus, but to speak about Jesus from an idea or from a perspective of identity politics. And what I mean by that is if Jesus was alive today, what sort of labels would apply to them? And um, I just think it would be an interesting thing to do and something that I think about because, as I've said before, that I do find the story of Jesus and the things that have been reported to have been done and said by him to be very inspiring. And so, yeah, let's get into it. So, um, Jesus was definitely queer. I think it's fairly evident to see that because I think you can make a strong case for Jesus being agender, aromantic, and asexual. Asexual and aromantic are, um, from all accounts, like of we're talking about like canon Christianity here, right? Or Jesus didn't do that kind of thing, um, and it sort of gets a bit kind of incel-y in modern day churches, but the way they teach it. But anyway, but I think you can make a case. I think you don't need to make a case for in canon Christianity for Jesus being asexual and aromantic, because it just didn't do that kind of. But you can make a case potentially for Jesus being either a trans man or a trans woman. Um, so how Jesus would be a trans man would be if you took it super literally that there was a virgin birth type situation. Okay, in that situation, there would be no sort of XY contributing to the genetic makeup of the baby. So the baby would have to have somehow been fertilized with the mother's DNA as well. And so um, it would be kind of impossible for Jesus to be um, AMAB or like assigned masculine or man or at birth, whatever, in that case. So if you really want to take virgin birth seriously, then the fact that Jesus went around saying that, like referring to himself as a man and all that, um, you can make a pretty solid case that Jesus is a trans man. But you could also make the case that Jesus was like a trans woman in the way that, um, although maybe having been assigned male at birth, there were certain social norms that uh, Jesus had to fit into, and maybe they were not ready for, um, proper gender theory, or maybe he just never thought better of it. But there was definitely quite a feminine essence to, or not essence, but like vibe or um, sort of the stuff Jesus didn't really fit into the masculinity of the day. Um, Jesus did things that would have normally been done more by women, etc. And so yeah, I would say it's like a weird like water sound coming from over there. It's distracting me. Sorry, but yeah, I would say like that's more of a stretch maybe, um, but it is the stretch that I would relate to myself, so I can go there in my own head, I guess. Um, so then I wanted to also talk a bit more about some of the other things. So I personally think it is quite a safe bet to say that Jesus was autistic. Just all the interactions Jesus had with people seem to be uh, unusual. Like people were always like shocked at what he was saying, like oh my gosh. And as someone who's autistic, like I get that all the time. Like people always like oh my gosh, like I never thought of it that way, and it's like for me, it's like I've never thought of it any other way, so whatever. But I feel like that is basically what would have been happening with Jesus. Is people would have been like, "Oh my gosh, Jesus, I never thought of it that way. You just blew my mind." Uh, and that's not saying that Jesus was like super intelligent. I don't actually think intelligence exists. Like that isn't a good concept. There's no general sense of intelligence. You just get really good at certain skills or not. But um, so even in that sense, but like when I say wow, you just blew my mind. It's not like because you like somehow on like a better like superior or whatever. It's just the fact that you're different and a different perspective is mind blowing to people who haven't seen it before. You know, it's not a huge thing. It's just a thing. um, and yeah, and then I think if we get into the political side of things, obviously, uh, to me, Jesus talks a lot about giving people what they need, and collectivization, but also was someone who supported you having your own free will. So definitely on the more anarchist side, um, and I would say, yeah, I would say proto-egoist communist myself. um, just egoist communism is, in its very simplest, um, the idea that you can't have individualism without collectivism and you can't have collectivism without individualism, that it's impossible for you to separate those things because you can only achieve either of them when they're both there. And that's what kind of world Jesus wanted people to live in, is one where people voluntarily acted in good faith to each other and cooperated without money, actually. Um, and then Jesus was also a person of color, and there's different arguments for him being black, or he may have been not black but like brown, um, I guess. But definitely not white. And in the society they lived in, um, they're they were being occupied by the Romans. So the Romans were basically the oppressors there. So they were being oppressed on a kind of like on a racial line, and also religious. So I think that is also why a lot of people find Jesus to be someone that they can relate to, because if you have a struggle in your life, uh, you know, there's examples of Jesus going through the same struggle. And so I think um, a lot of people have the value of intersectionality taken from Jesus, but then they don't necessarily have the theory to put it into practice, which is what you need to learn and study, and it's a skill you have to develop as well. Um, so it's not enough to just get the right value um, if you don't have the ability to put into practice those values. So, you know, and yeah, I think if we want to put into practice the values and the things that Jesus was advocating for, then anarchist socialism and egoist communism and intersectionality are all vital. And I think that if Christianity isn't giving us a Jesus like that, despite that being the Jesus that seems to be in the Bible, then what is that Christianity? Is it, I mean, I saw someone referring to Donald Trump as King Jesus, and they were like, yay, King Jesus Trump, yay. I mean, I would say very likely you could say Trump is, you know, Trump is maybe the beast, or the USA is the beast. One of them's the beast and the other one's the antichrist. Wait, Trump is the antichrist if people are calling him Christ. Yes. I mean, Trump is literally a rapist, and he's going on racist chants, and he's literally Somalia is like pretty close to where Jesus was born. Like, I think Ilhan Omar is the closest thing to Jesus you can get in the Congress, and that's the person Trump is trying to get the right wing to um, fight against so hard. So he's positioning himself as the enemy of real Jesus would have been as well. So antichrist in both opposition to real Jesus in ideology and in the practical, people who are most like Jesus he hates the most, and for the fact that people are calling him Christ. And I think it's very interesting how many right-wing Christian pastors and Christians are supporting Trump. And it's like, when I was in the church, people always used to talk about, oh, we're in the end times, like, oh, this is like the end of the world, and you read Revelations, and then Revelations is saying all this stuff, but actually, like, I think some of that stuff was applicable to when it was actually written, but I also think that if you look at the way things are going, it is actually the end times according to, there literally is the most powerful country has a fascist dictator who has who has the mainstream of Christianity who are right-wing, calling him a messiah, unironically, and him being opposed to actual Jesus in every way imaginable. Like, wow. That's the kind of thing that makes me wonder if this is like a simulation or real life or whatever, because like, how can it be so absurd that I grew up being told I was in the end times, but now when I'm in my 30s, everything that I got told would happen is happening, but the people who were telling me it would happen are the ones supporting this false messiah, weirdly enough, because I grew up in the right-wing part of Christianity, and the left-wing part of Christianity is going to make a comeback because we need to take out the antichrists, and that isn't just Mr. Drumpf, it's every fascist, and it's every person who opposes the marginalized and opposes the weak and the poor. Every capitalist is a form of antichrist, in a sense. So yeah, I guess that is me talking about that, and I will probably stick to my word about not doing many videos about religion now that I've gotten the full list of things I wanted to get out. So yeah, thank you very much for watching, and feel free to ask questions in the comments and like and all that. Bye. I'm trying to wait for a specific time, okay? See if I can get it right.